one gain at a time keeps my hope alive. We lose some, but we gain some. In my work, I tell people, one girl at a time will keep my head up.
We're at this incredible moment where women are standing up, speaking out, running for office, saying, what more can I do?
This time gives us an opportunity to be extremely creative, to really think outside of the box, to be innovative.
To rethink power, to rethink the kind of leadership that we want.
To have autonomy and control over our own lives, that's when there will be equality.
I know that a bright future is possible.
Time came when people were, after talking to people, was having a short conversation, people said, have you written a book? Have you written a book about your life? So finally, I gave in to writing a book. After looking back in my life, I said, I started by writing a few comments here and there in my notebooks. Later on, I found, when I saw a number of the notebook, when I saw many notes in my notebooks here and there, I saw how far I've come. So this was in 1972. This was in 1981. I see. So I thought. Then I said, let me write.
Let me say that some of the things I'm saying are also in my book, which I've just completed. So the title of my book is Stand. And I've written it because people keep asking me those questions. And so I said, let me put it in one book. So when somebody asks me, but how did you do it? I'll say, read it in my book.
It's important for feminists in Uganda and in Africa to document her stories. I call them her stories as opposed to histories or their stories. The reason for that is, if we look back, I don't know what the younger generation of young people in Uganda today, I don't know what they learn about independence and who the founding fathers of independence were, for example. But when I learned about independence, I learned that the struggle was led by African men and that African women were completely invisible. So the question I kept asking was, or we kept asking was, so what were the African women doing whilst all this was going on? They were completely made invisible. And the danger about being invisible is, or the subtext to being made invisible, is that you haven't contributed anything, therefore you don't deserve anything, right? It's important at every stage of our lives, as African people, as African women, as African gender non-conforming people, to always document the contributions that we have made. Since we went into that project around documentation, and it's a continuous process, we have discovered exactly what African women were doing, in freedom struggles for the continent, just how much they sacrificed the first woman to be killed, the first person to be killed in Kenya for the independence struggle was a woman. She stood on the steps of the then Norfolk Hotel and, challenged the men to say, we can't be treated like this. Go out on the street, She was killed. She was the first person to demonstrate. There are so many examples of women in South Africa pass laws, women here in Uganda, and what they did. And I think, and many of us think, that the issue about documentation is, one, to build political relevance, two, to tell our own stories in our own way, or else our stories get told for us, three, to be part of the process that builds the country in a way that works for all of its citizens. Yeah, for we're contributors, therefore we must be benefactors as well. And of course, four, since it's a movement, hopefully it's a movement that learns from the past, is not beholden to the past, but learns from the past, and doesn't keep reinventing the past, or doesn't keep reinventing the mistakes of the past. And that's why it's important to document.
In a world where women are othered, what scares you the most?
What scares me the most? So many things. I like to walk in the morning, really early in the morning, and it scares me that that could be unsafe. I have sisters. It scares me that every single time they go out, even with their friends, I am afraid of what could happen to them. I have friends who, every time they come over, I must insist that they text me when they get home, because I know so many things can happen in between there. So it's really a question of safety and survival, and the fact that we exist in a society that makes us feel so unsafe is the most scary thing. Is it true that women in Uganda are currently more empowered than men? That's really laughable to me, because I'm like, where do you exist in this country? Where do you exist in this country? We just had a whole conversation around women getting raped and killed and their bodies dumped on the street, and the government responding by saying those are their ex-lovers, those are sex workers. You know what I mean? Recently, we were attempting to pass a bill that was still saying that married women must always consent to sex with their husbands, right? We still we still go to churches and other religious institutions where women are told that simply because they are women, they are lesser than, right? We still have schools that are teaching our children that the head of a household inherently is a man, right? I don't understand where this sentiment, truly, if it's not a distraction, if it's not falsified, where does that come from? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want us to look at exceptions to the general rule. I'm an exception to the general rule, and I understand that, and I stand in that privilege, you understand? But the fact of the matter is, we still have girls who are unable to go to school, right? Because the parent has chosen that the boy child is more important. We still have girls who are unable to go to school because they don't have pads. I am still, even with all the privilege I have, afraid to walk on the street because men are going to grope at me. How many rape defilement cases do we have in this country? I don't understand. It's untrue, but even more than that, it's insulting, because it takes away from what we're supposed to be working towards. We have been trailing behind, right? And any small progress that we're making now has been hard-won. And in fact, we're just getting started.
We're at Mempro, one of the spaces that I have worked in on hosting the organization I started in 2008. And here is one of my mentees, Twasiima, who is also now one of the employees in the organization. So we believe in mentoring young people, and we also believe that once they are mentored, they can do the job well. What keeps me going in this work is that every day there is something which annoys me. There is a girl being raped. During this period, women are being killed by the people who say they love them. Girls are being made pregnant and they are being sent away from their homes because the family says they don't accept teenage pregnancy. Girls are kicked out of school. Girls and women still can't talk. They can't have economic independence. That is what causes me feminist rage, and that feminist rage has to be used positively to keep working on transforming negative spaces for women. I started an organization for mentoring young women. This work is important for me because if I drop dead, what would I have left behind? That's number one. Secondly, transforming the unequal platform in which we participate has to be a collective. There is no way I can change the world. There is no way I can change the world by not passing on what I know. The young people don't do it the way I do it. They do it their way, but they know that they have to do it. Young people, especially, maybe the younger people may be different, but if I talk about, for example, the young people of my daughter's generation, they grew up in feminist homes. They didn't see discrimination. They didn't see their, at least talking about myself, they didn't see their father beating their mother. And so they have some naivety. But I know the world has changed when I meet young people and the violence they experience in homes, in schools. And so part of what I do is to make sure that they don't normalize inequality. They don't normalize violence against their lives. That's why it is important work for me. But also to know that when I'm dead, there is one girl who will carry on with what I did.
I feel very pleased. And in fact, I'm very happy about all the women's organizations that have come up. For a day forum for women in democracy, where women can learn more about democracy. There's Faraway Forum for Women Educationists. Then there's the WUNET, Women Organizations Network, all the organizations of women where they network. I feel very, very pleased and say they are carrying on what the others, and their objections again the same, to raise up women. Yes, and raise up women and women to also to carry on where we left and where this will live. And so the more they recruit more, and even for instance, they raise money to educate more girls. Those are those who have been to the university through the money which is being themselves been advantaged by the organization. When they leave, they have contributed towards raising others to go to university. That's a great success.
What has kept my hope alive to continue working in spite of the gains we've lost? Every time I work with one girl and I see how transformed her life is, every time I talk to one man in a local community trying to persuade him to take his daughter to school, and he does, one gain at a time keeps my hope alive. We lose some, but we gain some. In my work, I tell people, one girl at a time will keep my head up.
So this I wrote, when did I write this? 2016, maybe 2017, with one of my feminist faves, Patricia McFadden, who is a woman that I look up to and who has done some amazing revolutionary work. So it was a huge honor to be able to co-author this essay with her. would like for us to also broaden our understanding of activism, right? Because essentially what activists are trying to do is to mobilize, to organize, to create some changes. And how we organize and how we mobilize is really besides the point, because ultimately all of us are clear on what the goal is. All of us are clear on what the problem is. The problem is that we exist in a society with a lot of oppressive systems. And so we're actively working towards dismantling those systems one brick at a time. And sometimes that means we have to use Twitter. Sometimes that means that we have to march on the street. Sometimes that means we're writing. Sometimes we're doing, interviews like this. So it's really a multifaceted approach. And I wish that people would understand that just because you see a feminist tweeting on Twitter, one, it doesn't mean that's all they're doing. But even if that was all that they were doing, it would be enough. There's young people who are unsure how to support because the issues sometimes seem overwhelming, and I can understand that. How they start supporting. First, it's as simple as starting with where you are, right? We don't exist in a vacuum. We come from families, we attend church and mosques, and in all those spaces that we occupy, there's patriarchy. They are systems of oppression that we need to call out. So it's as easy as even just when you hear a sexist comment that your friends make and you are supportive of the cause, you understand why it's important, just call it out and say that's not right. When you are with your parents or your friends and you engage them and say, by the way, this is the problem and this is how we can contribute towards it, that's also a way. Not everybody is going to be marching on the street, and not everybody needs to march on the street, because the small incremental changes ultimately add up. So for any young person, just start where you are. Don't be too overwhelmed by everything. Don't feel like you need to take on the world, because I remember when I began my feminism, that's how I felt. I felt like I constantly needed to be on the street. I constantly needed to be marching. And it's not true that that's the only way you can actually be supportive of the movement and you can, contribute to this cause.
We have the power to achieve gender equality in this generation. That means living in a world where women and girls are fully represented in positions of power and make decisions about issues that affect their lives, can finish school, can choose when and if to become pregnant, and their choices are supported and respected. A world where women and girls are safe from sexual and other forms of violence, can own land, get a loan to start a business, and have a career where they are paid equally for their work. It is a world where women and girls are valued equally and their human rights are upheld and respected. A world that is more just and prosperous for all of us. Sounds amazing, right? Getting there means we need to understand women's and girls' experiences, challenges, and contributions. But there is a surprising amount we still don't know. Like how a woman's time is spent, whether they have access to affordable childcare, how many experience violence, how many have access to the internet or own a mobile phone, or how they are affected by climate change, and so much more. That's because important data about women and girls is incomplete or missing, either because gender data is not funded, is not prioritized, or governments, donors, businesses, and civil society don't collect and use it. But gender data is essential to ensure smarter, more effective, and equitable policies that make a real difference in the lives of women and girls. It's time to act. We must collect and analyze gender data, fund gender data gaps, and use gender data for policy making. Remember that world we imagined? Let's make it real.
I'm just so encouraged by what young people are doing now. It's not all young people, it's not nearly enough, but I think there is so much more opportunity now. When I was growing up, the opportunities, when my grandmother was growing up, the opportunities for women who had education were secretary, nurse, and maybe a teacher, right? When I was coming up, it was, if you were educated and so on, it was doctor, lawyer, or possibly engineer. Now young people have thrown caution to those winds. Here you are filming and doing a documentary. People are in fashion. People are in, environmental rights. Young people are on social media doing creative things. On that, there is the arts and so on. There's such a huge canvas where people can find self-expression. And I think for me, the ultimate freedom really is that space where you can be who you are with dignity and with respect. But it first starts with you, the individual. The transformation is in you. And I hope there will be enough knowledge in future for future generations to come that actually women and people who are marginalized on the basis of sex and gender and sexual identity, that there is nothing to prove to anybody. They are human and they're enough.
Nice. Well said. Yeah.
I don't know that we're going to manage to achieve gender equality in whatever broad term we define it as in my lifetime. And this is something that I've made peace with. The work is important because it is one on a continuum, right? So there are many strides that we have made. We are not where we were maybe 20 years ago, and that's important to acknowledge. We're also not where we want to be. And for example, I have retired in many senses from certain spaces that I used to activist in because I would like for people to be able to carry on, and they will be able to carry on and carry on. There is no answer. I don't know, when does racism, patriarchy, capitalism end? I don't know. And instead of that being so daunting and so frightening, I think if anything, it needs to motivate us more. One, because like I said, we can already see the strides that we have made, right? We cannot, and also because we are already now imagining, and I think that right now is even, perhaps we're even able to reimagine anew because of all the different global movements that are happening and contributing towards this reimagination, right? So if anything, I would like to argue that we must continue to press on, and we're working for our children and their children because we don't want them to be experiencing the exact same things that we're experiencing in the same exact ways, right? So in my lifetime, probably not, but that's okay because either way, it doesn't take away from how important this work is.